Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan, and today we are discussing the new Flaming Lips record, King's Mouth, Music and Songs. This is the 15th studio album from the American psychedelic rock band. This is certainly a group that has had their fair share of low points over the past decade or so. I think back to 2015, where they co-produced Miley, Cyrus and her Dead Petz album. Easily one of the worst albums I've ever heard. But then again, they've also made one of my favorite songs of all time, which is In the Morning of the Magicians, which came on their critically acclaimed album Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots. So yeah, coming into this new Flaming Lips record, I was not expecting a lot given that pure spread of good and bad things going for them. The first thing you should know about King's Mouth, Music and Songs, this is a record that technically dropped on Record Store Day back in April. It technically came out for vinyl, and now it's finally available for streaming in July as I'm reviewing this. And another thing you should be aware of is that this is a concept record. We have Mick Jones of The Clash, who is providing some narration, not to be confused with Mick Jones of Foreigner. Side note, I typically refer to the band Foreigner when I don't know a specific band from the 80s. Anyways, Mick Jones, he does the voiceovers on here. It's a bit of like a coming of age story for a king of a nation whose mother died during the birth of her son. This king, he has all this knowledge being filled into his mind, all the stars, the entire universe basically, and he's just this giant baby. He's just absurdly huge. And you know what? He's a good king. He protects the city that he's living in, and everyone kind of looks up to him, and then he kind of protects them from this massive avalanche that comes in. But he dies in the process of this going on, and people are very sad. But what do? They rush to him and they cut off his head, they sever it, they dip it in steel to preserve his head in some way. It is a bit of an oddball story. I'll save my thoughts to the end of the video after I run through some of the tracks, musically, what they're doing. So we get this first song on the record, which is a spoken word intro. If you're not a fan of spoken word, I wouldn't recommend this album. And that's another thing. You gotta know that this is a record that you need to listen to all the way throughout, because there isn't really a song that you can kind of just like pick out and just play on its own. All these tracks build on top of one another. They have excellent transitions. We get the second track on here, Sparrow, which is one of my favorites on the album. I feel like the drawn out verse kind of benefits the composition well. This atmosphere just builds up with anticipation for the instruments that are slowly added throughout its runtime, mainly the choppy and lo-fi drums and the acoustic guitar. There's just something about this dynamic rise and fall that makes this track so lovely. It is soothing. Obviously, we have some sweet and honey-glazed vocals too, and the melody is just awesome. Giant Baby is the next track on here, and I love the titles on this album. It continues the narrative of this baby king becoming this massive child who is just like fascinated with space. Really, Giant Baby as a song from a lyrical standpoint is going to be something that is like learning and empathizing and just realizing that like life can be sad. On this track though, we are met with these ethereal synth tones which are very graceful and ambient in the audio spacing. We also get some tinges to experimental neo-psychedelia, kind of glitchy synthesizers that pop up into the mix sporadically. Mother Universe is the next track that kind of builds towards another one. It's this instrumental which has some dazzling instrumentation. How Many Times is the next track that it bleeds into, and this is this lullaby full of positivity kind of song. It's just like teaching you that no matter how many times you fail, you gotta get up and try again. It's also this baby realizing that his parents will always love him too. It might be a bit of a comforting thought, you know, like this album might be too soft and too optimistic for you to enjoy, but that's what I enjoy from it. Sonically, the track How Many Times is also gripping. We have these acoustic guitars and auxiliary percussion textures that are very tranquil, and we have this seamless addition of synthesizers, which is very appreciated. Moving on from there, Electric Fire is one of my favorite songs on here as well. It's another one that has a voiceover from Mick Jones. We have a flawless transition from the previous track. Just another natural, organic continuation of the narrative, and we have this jammed mix full of timpanis, or at least what sounds like it's electronically made to sound that way. Electric Fire eventually sweeps over with very majestic and sublime I don't know what to really call it, but it's a sensory overload, and I just drop my jaw every time I hear it at the end of this track. The closest comparison I can really think of is like the harrowing synthesizers from like a Tim Hecker project. But yeah, the positives keep rolling and rolling on this album. We have the next track, All for the Life of the City, which is the best song on the album for the guitar, I would say, in my opinion. We have this descending chord progression, we have this mini kind of solo, which is very captivating, and it's absolutely fantastic. We even have some weird harp and trippy vocals that are thrown into the mix as well, and this mellotron that is sprinkled in all the right places. Just as I said, that song was the highlight for the guitar on this album. The next track, Feedaloodum, Beedle is the highlight on this album for the bass. Next up from there, we get a couple spoken word songs on here, Funeral Parade and Dipped in Steel. This Funeral Parade song kind of has like this marching band feel to it. We also get these bells that ring through at the beginning and end of the track as just like life begins and ends. And this album really just kind of comes full circle at the end. We have a song, Mouth of the King. This is the penultimate track. We have this king who's passed away, but he's still able to pass on his love to the next generation, very much in the same way that his parents passed on their love to him. So yeah, overall, as this record, as a concept, it is encapsulating. It is something that will transport you to another universe as you just like wrap yourself in this blanket listening to this nice optimistic music. The best part of this album, I feel like, even if you aren't fully focused on the lyrics, you can still just enjoy the sounds. Both the sounds and the lyrics are just equally compelling with the environment that they create here. It's a very warm and inviting listen to all the way throughout. And yes, the story is a little bit out there, but I do enjoy it. I think it's something that blurs the lines between happiness, sadness, pain, growth, faith. It just throws together all the elements of life and what everyone typically questions into a very contained, cohesive, and pretty optimistic conclusion. Now, this album isn't perfect. There's this one moment that comes on here with the song How Many Times. We have this vocal processing on the counting. It's a very childish kind of sound, I think. But outside that, that's really the only letdown of this album for me. It's something that is very light. It's beautiful. It's fragile. It's elegant. There's just so many words I can use to describe this. It's also relaxing. It's quiet. It's calm. It's tranquil. And it can thrust over with just like these rushing waves of strings, synthesizers, mellotron, whatever they're kind of using on here. I think it just benefits well. This is easily one of my favorite records of 2019. I wasn't expecting anything out of it, and sometimes it's just nice to stumble upon something that you have no expectations for. So this is like my happy little accident of 2019. And no, I'm not a father yet, so that can't be a happy little accident. I'm feeling a 9 out of 10 on this project, and I have no issues with recommending this to anyone. There's the review of the new Flaming Lips record. Sound off down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of it. It's not always about my opinion. I want to hear yours. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a rockin' day.